I am Reverend Michael Collins, a Catholic priest from a small parish in a quiet town. My life has been dedicated to faith and serving my community. But what I'm about to share is a story that tested my faith and determination like never before. On a cold winter night, a young man named Daniel was brought to our church by his parents. He was tormented by unsettling manifestations and seemingly supernatural behaviors. His eyes were wide open, lifeless, while his voice emitted guttural sounds that sent chills down the spine. His parents were terrified and convinced that the devil had possessed their son. As a priest, I had read and studied the rituals of exorcism, but I had never faced a situation like this. The decision to proceed with the exorcism was not taken lightly. It required approval from the bishop and ensuring strict adherence to the procedures established by the church. A lengthy preparation process began, during which I consulted with a veteran exorcist, Father Anthony. His words gave me a sense of strength and determination, but at the same time, I realized the seriousness of what we were preparing for. The night of the exorcism arrived, and the church was filled with the faithful praying for Daniel's well-being. The atmosphere was charged with anxiety and anticipation as the community gathered around the altar. The young man was bound to a wooden table with straps placed in the center of the sanctuary, illuminated only by a series of lit candles. Silence reigned in the church, interrupted only by the whisper of prayers that filled the air like a protective incantation. Father Anthony and I wore liturgical vestments as we prepared for the ritual. We both had extensive liturgical experience, but we knew that this was a unique challenge. We understood that we were about to engage in an intense and dangerous spiritual battle against a dark entity. The tension in the air was palpable, and the sound of prayers filled the church with a melody of hope and concern. The faces of the faithful were tense, marked by a mixture of faith and fear. Everyone knew that we were about to plunge into a world of mysteries and fears that defied human logic. Daniel lay motionless on the table, with wide, lifeless eyes. His skin was pale, and he was sweating profusely despite the cold in the church. While we were prepared to embark on the ritual, the sight of that tormented young man touched the heart of each of us. With profound faith, we began to recite the prayers of exorcism with a firm and steady voice. Incense burned, filling the church with a sacred fragrance. At that moment, the silence was broken by a sharp scream from Daniel. It was an inhuman, harrowing sound that seemed to come from a deep and dark place. The young man thrashed violently, as if he were trying to free himself from something oppressing him. His eyes were rolled upward, and all we could see were the white sclera, as his pupils were completely dilated. The prayers continued, but the demon possessing Daniel fought with fierce resistance. It was as if the malevolent entity did not want to release its hold on the young man without a fight. Father Anthony and I exchanged another look, reinforcing our resolve. As the prayers continued, Daniel began to speak in a voice that did not belong to him. It was guttural, distorted, and filled with malevolence. The words were senseless and cryptic, but they revealed unsettling details about the sins of those present in the church. Daniel's family listened in terror as the demons seemed to take pleasure in revealing their darkest secrets. Despite the dark forces trying to pull us into darkness, Father Anthony and I remained steadfast, and the prayers flowed steadily from our lips. The spiritual battle intensified, but we knew we could not yield. The night turned into an eternity of prayers and cries, a struggle between faith and evil. The community continued to pray with hope and determination, supporting our efforts. And in the end, after what felt like endless hours, the demon left Daniel's soul. A piercing, agonizing scream echoed through the church, and the young man collapsed on the table, exhausted and weak. He was finally free. As the community rejoiced and sang hymns of thanksgiving, Father Anthony and I embraced, overwhelmed by emotion and gratitude. Faith had triumphed, but the night of the exorcism would remain an indelible testament to the thin line between the divine and darkness. It was a night when faith overcame every obstacle, and light defeated the darkness.
I am investigator David Turner, and I wish to share with you my most unsettling and extraordinary experience. It all began when I received a call from a couple who had recently inherited the old convent from their deceased aunt, a nun who had spent most of her life in seclusion. They told me they had started hearing strange noises coming from the convent at night and were convinced there was something sinister in the building. Curious and intrigued by the possibility of an unusual case, I went to the location. The convent was an imposing stone building surrounded by a dense and decaying forest. The owners led me inside, where silence reigned, broken only by the echoing of my footsteps on the rotting wooden floors. As I explored the convent, I realized that much of the furniture and decorations had remained untouched for decades. Crucifixes hung on the walls, old Bibles, and religious paraphernalia collected dust. But what truly caught my attention was the corridor leading to the underground. The wooden door was covered in mysterious inscriptions and deep scratches. I turned to the owners and began asking questions about the history of the convent. Their aunt, Sister Mary, had spent most of her life there and had been the last nun to live there. They told stories of Sister Mary spending hours in the underground, praying and performing ancient rituals. It seemed the convent held secrets and mysteries connected to its past. I decided to begin my investigation in the underground. The door creaked open and revealed a series of dark hallways, illuminated only by the dim light of my flashlight. The silence was oppressive, and the air carried a damp and rancid odor. As I ventured deeper, I noticed the walls were covered in incomprehensible writings and mysterious symbols. It was evident that Sister Mary had spent a significant amount of time in this place, immersed in some form of cult or rituals. The further I went, the more the sense of unease grew. Finally, I reached a wooden door hidden at the end of the corridor. It was heavy and adorned with carvings depicting biblical scenes. When I opened it, I entered a secret room that appeared to have been the heart of Sister Mary's activities. The room contained old books on occultism, spent candles, and ritual objects. But what truly captured my attention was an ancient crucifix hanging on the wall. It had an eerie atmosphere and seemed to radiate a sinister energy. It was clear that Sister Mary had devoted much of her life to dark practices in this room. I decided to conduct further research into the history of the convent, digging through local archives and seeking testimonies from anyone who had contact with Sister Mary. What I discovered left me breathless. Sister Mary had been involved in mystical rituals and practices that had nothing to do with traditional religion. As I continued my investigations, inexplicable events began to take place. Strange noises echoed through the convent at night. Objects moved on their own, and the walls seemed to whisper long-buried secrets. My research turned into a struggle to uncover the truth behind the convent's mystery, a truth that would test my rationality and faith, bringing to light secrets that had remained buried for generations. The convent became my battleground, a place where the light of reason clashed with the darkness of mystery. Every night I ventured into the dark corridor of the underground, confronting the darkness and the sinister forces that seemed to dominate the place. The nights became increasingly unsettling. Each step I took resonated like an echo in an ancient and forgotten realm. The strange symbols and cryptic writings on the walls seemed to come to life, as if they were observing me from the darkness. The feeling of being watched grew with every step I took in the corridor. And then, there were the inexplicable events. Objects seemed to move on their own, and doors opened and closed without any logical explanation. Candles lit and extinguished themselves, creating a ghostly atmosphere that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't deny that there were forces at play that eluded my understanding. I continued my research in the archives and through testimonies from those who knew Sister Mary. I discovered that she had conducted alchemical experiments and invocation rituals. There were even rumors of human sacrifices in the convent in distant times. Meanwhile, my relationship with the owners of the convent became increasingly strained. They were worried and frightened by the paranormal phenomena occurring in their inherited home. They began to doubt my abilities to solve the mystery and simply wanted to rid themselves of the convent and its unsettling memories. But I was determined to uncover the truth. Finally, as I scrutinized one of Sister Mary's books on occultism, I made a discovery that would unveil the horrifying truth. The convent had been a place of obscene experiments and attempts to evoke demonic powers. Sister Mary had tried to open a gateway between the world of men and the realm of darkness, and the price paid had been terrible. As I read the details of the rituals and offerings made to gain power, I realized that the ancient crucifix suspended in the secret room was the focal point of it all. It had been used as a key to access the demonic realm, and despite everything, it still retained an aura of malevolence. The truth overwhelmed me, but I knew I had to act swiftly. I prepared a purification ritual based on religious principles and white magic to close the rift opened by Sister Mary. I gathered my courage, and with the crucifix in hand, I entered the secret room. The ritual became a battle between light and darkness, a challenge between faith and the shadows. As I uttered the words of power, the crucifix emitted a sinister wail, but I did not waver. I continued to pray and invoke divine protection. Finally, when the last word was spoken, a powerful burst resounded through the convent, and malevolent energy dissolved in the air. The unexplained events ceased, and peace returned to the old structure. The battle was over, and light had triumphed. With the passage of time, the convent returned to being a place of serenity, and the dark history of Sister Mary was finally unveiled. My experience at the convent will remain etched in my memory forever. It was a lesson on the fragility of the border between the known and the unknown, on the strength of faith, and on the determination to pursue the truth, even when it is unsettling and dark.